In the world, rights are argued, documented, defended. We make appeals to reason, to justice, to law, and yet the rights of the many remain always at risk, vulnerable to violence, to corruption, to fear. Do not put your trust in princes, says the psalmist, in human beings who cannot save. We know this instinctively. Empires rise and fall, laws change, rights vanish. But what if there is a kind of right that no empire can touch? What if the most essential right is not written in law, but inscribed in your being? What if it was with you from the beginning? There is a teaching in the Gospel of Thomas. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. That is what we are here to explore today. What lies within you that cannot be taken away, and what happens when you begin to live from it. I want to propose that the most fundamental human right is the right to love, not as sentiment, not as obligation, but as the capacity to recognize and respond to what is sacred in another. Love, in its fullest sense, is not a permission granted by law. It is a freedom given at birth, a flame that no darkness can extinguish. The kingdom is within you and it is outside of you, Jesus said. But unless you know this, you remain as one asleep. This right to love is not a matter of social construction. It is ontological. It exists because you exist. Even if the world denies your speech, your place, your value, your capacity to love remains. And that, I suggest, is the deepest root of human dignity. I hope our model will help you understand this right more clearly. We'll look at how this capacity to love is not only inalienable, but irreducible. How it undergirds not just ethics, but knowing. And how it transforms the way we think about rights, resistance, and freedom. This is not a political message. It is a spiritual one. Not a new theory to believe, but an old truth to remember. Something that has been within you all along. Something no one gave you. Something no one can take away. Come and see. Most of us inherit a certain way of thinking about rights. We're taught that rights are things we have because society has agreed to give them to us. Written down in constitutions, enforced through laws, debated in courts. These are what we call constructed rights. They come into existence through human agreement. They're real, but they're also fragile. A right that can be written down can be crossed out. A second category includes rights that are contingent, not necessarily written in law, but shaped by social and political conditions. These might be the freedoms we enjoy in relatively stable societies, like the ability to express ourselves or gather in protest. But these, too, are subject to erosion, change the political climate, and these rights can vanish. But is that really all there is to a right? We propose a third category, intrinsic rights, rights that emerge not from institutions or customs, but from what it means to be a conscious, feeling, choosing human being. These are ontological rights. They don't depend on being granted because they arise from the nature of who we are. To clarify this distinction, consider three modes by which rights can be denied. Some are prohibited from being denied. Think of legal protections that say, you may not restrict this. Others are prevented from being denied through force or threat. But these protections can fail. But an impossible denial is something altogether different. It means that the denial itself is incoherent. It violates the very nature of what's being denied. This is where we locate the right to love. Not because it's protected, not because it's allowed, but because it cannot, in principle, be taken from you. No one, no matter how powerful, can reach inside you and extinguish your capacity to love. You may be punished for expressing it. You may be silenced, exiled, or even tortured. But love, real, internal, authentic love, remains yours. Not because of what society says, but because of what you are. This ontological shift is the cornerstone of our model. It calls us to stop thinking about rights as permissions we request and start recognizing them as powers we already possess. Let's explore this power more closely. What is love in the sense we're speaking of here? Not just romance or affection, not even just the desire for connection. We're talking about love as a volitional capacity, the internal ability to care, to commit, to affirm the value of another being. And when we analyze this capacity, we see that it has three crucial features. First, Internality. Love arises from within you. It's not implanted or commanded. It wells up from your own perspective, your own lived experience. Even when it's shaped by another's presence, the experience of loving is yours alone. That's why, even in total isolation or under intense oppression, people still report loving their children, their memories, their ideals. Second, volitionality. Love is not purely instinctual. You can't be forced to love. You may act in loving ways for fear or duty, but feeling love cannot be commanded, nor can it be fully stopped. Even when we try not to love someone, because it's difficult, painful, or dangerous, love can persist. In this way, love is an expression of deep inner freedom. And third, irreducibility. Love cannot be reduced to behavior, chemicals, or evolutionary function. It can be modeled, explained, imitated, but never fully captured. You know this when you've been on the receiving end of fake affection. The gestures are there, but something's missing. What's missing is the authentic, subjective presence of love. Now consider the limits of external interference. Love can be simulated. We can pretend. It can be suppressed. We can hide it, deny it, fear it. But it is ultimately unreachable. No law, punishment, or social force can reach into the interior of your heart and erase your capacity to love. Think of the resilience this implies. In concentration camps, people continued to love. In solitary confinement, parents imagined their children and felt devotion. In the face of injustice, many have chosen to love their enemies, not out of passivity, but from a deep, unshakable inner strength. This is why we say the right to love is inalienable, because it's not something we do under permission. It's something we are always capable of by the very fact of being human. So far, we've spoken of love as a capacity and a right. But what if love is also a way of knowing? We tend to privilege thought, cognition, as the foundation of knowledge. Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." But what if that's not the full story? Let's consider a triad of ways of knowing. First, there is thinking, the rational, analytical mind. It's precise, systematic, powerful. But it can be cold. It doesn't tell you what matters, only what is. Second, there is valuing, the capacity to care. Before we reason about what to do, we feel what is meaningful. We don't seek knowledge neutrally, we seek it because we care. This caring directs our attention, frames our priorities, shapes our understanding. And third, there is loving, which combines knowing and valuing into a profound openness. When we love, we don't just observe reality, we enter into relation with it. Love commits us, involves us, makes us vulnerable. It's not detached knowledge, it's participatory. This is more than poetry. Neuroscience now supports the idea that emotion shapes perception and cognition. We don't learn about the world through thought alone, we engage it through feeling. And love is perhaps the most comprehensive and generative of feelings. But this understanding is under threat. The modern world often tries to reduce our inner life. The mechanistic view sees us as machines, input, output, no mystery. The behaviorist view reduces love to reinforcement patterns, just dopamine and training. The objectivist view dismisses anything that can't be measured, as though what we feel inside isn't real unless it's visible on a scan. But none of these can account for what love really is. Ask yourself, when have you felt that someone truly saw you? Not just as a function or a label, but as a full person. That feeling comes from love. And when you offer that presence to someone else, you're not just relating. You're knowing them in a way no algorithm ever could. This is why love is not just a right. It's a foundation for how we experience and understand reality. It is a radical form of knowing with, rather than knowing about. Now that we've grounded the right to love as an inner capacity, uncoercible, self-originated and foundational to knowing, it's time to ask, how does this compare to other rights we commonly talk about? We live in a world where rights are everywhere. Rights to privacy, to healthcare, to education, to expression. These are all deeply important, but they are not all the same. If we're going to think clearly about human rights, we need a way to distinguish between what's truly fundamental and what is socially or politically contingent. So let's consider 3 categories. First, there are revocable rights. these are entirely constructed. You have them because someone says you do, and they can be taken away just as easily. Think of things like driving privileges or regulatory protections. Valuable, yes. Fundamental, no. Second, we have enforceable rights. These are more robust, like the right to vote or to own property. They're often enshrined in law and supported by institutions. But still, they're dependent. Remove the legal or social structure, and the right loses its force. You may believe in it, but belief alone can't guarantee its reality. And then there are uncoercible rights, and this is where our model takes root. These are the rights that exist regardless of recognition, enforcement, or power. They don't depend on society because they originate in the structure of subjectivity itself. Here, we return to love. Love doesn't require permission. It doesn't rely on institutional support. It can't be revoked by decree. And crucially, its denial is not even coherent in the deepest sense. You can no more deny a person's right to love than you can deny their capacity to think or to feel. You can suppress the expression, yes, but the capacity, it's beyond your reach. This becomes especially important when we test the ontological status of a given right. Some rights are removable, cut them off, and they're gone. Others are suppressible. They can be blocked or minimized, but they still depend on external conditions. But a truly inviolable right is one that cannot be taken, not because of legal defense, but because of existential structure. This gives us a minimalist but powerful standard. If a right can be removed, it is not fundamental. If it can be suppressed, it may be important, but it is not inalienable. But if it cannot even be meaningfully denied, then, and only then, do we have a truly natural human right. And by this standard, the right to love stands not just among the most important, but perhaps as the most foundational right we possess. Of course, no idea about human freedom can go unchallenged. Love, we're told, is messy, unpredictable, not always noble. Can we really treat it as a universal good, let alone a universal right? To answer these objections, let's look more closely at the nature of love itself. Love begins as an involuntary feeling. It can arise suddenly without warning or logic. You meet someone or remember someone or even see something, a work of art, a cause, a child, and your heart responds. You didn't choose the moment. You didn't manufacture the emotion. It simply arrived. But love doesn't end there. We also have the capacity for willed attention. We choose what we nurture, where we focus our care, how we respond to those initial stirrings. You might feel affection for a stranger, but love grows only when you feed it with time, presence, and choice. And then there's sustained devotion, the long arc of love. Not just the feeling, not just the choice, but the commitment. This is the form of love that persists through hardship, through doubt, through the erosion of initial excitement. This is the love that parents show their children, that partners show one another, that people show to the vulnerable, the forgotten, the difficult. All three of these, feeling, attention, and devotion, make up what we mean by love. And they help us see how love can be spontaneous and volitional, fragile and resilient, a gift and a responsibility. But with freedom comes risk. That's the nature of any truly inalienable capacity. Love can be misused, twisted into control or obsession. It can become ambiguous, driven by unconscious needs, hidden fears, unresolved wounds. And yes, it can even be destructive, hurting ourselves or others in the name of care. These are not flaws in love. They are the price of freedom. To be truly free means that your love is real, not programmed, and anything real carries risk. But would we give up love to avoid its dangers? Would we trade our most vital freedom for safety? Most of us intuitively say no, because the capacity to love is not just one freedom among others, it's the freedom that gives our other freedoms meaning. So where does this all leave us? Let's bring the whole model into focus with 3 core affirmations. First, the right to love is uncoercible. It cannot be forced into being, and it cannot be erased. No matter the circumstances, your inner capacity to love remains yours. Second, it is self-originated. Love arises from within. It is not granted by society, not installed by nature like a reflex, and not imposed by external scripts. It is the expression of your subjective freedom. And third, love is epistemic. It is a mode of knowing. To love is not merely to feel, but to understand, to attend, to perceive with depth and presence. It is a way of relating to the world that brings meaning and clarity, not in spite of its emotionality, but because of it. And this brings us to the final implications for our understanding of human nature. We are, first and foremost, non-objectifiable. You are not a sum of data points. You are not a machine, a pattern, a profile. You are a living, breathing center of perspective, capable of care, and that makes you irreducible. You are also pre-legal. Your rights do not begin when someone writes them down. They do not end when institutions fail. The law may recognize your rights, but it does not create them. And above all, you are radically free, not in the shallow sense of doing whatever you want, but in the deeper sense of possessing the power to choose what you love, to act on your care, to create meaning in a world that cannot give it to you. This is what it means to say the right to love is not just a good idea. It is a truth of being. It is a foundation. It is a model. So what does it mean to live this truth? It means remembering that your most sacred freedom is not something you earn through obedience or achievement. It is something planted in you by the Father of all, present from the beginning, hidden like leaven in the dough. You will know the truth, Jesus said, and the truth will make you free. But this freedom is not license. It is recognition. It is seeing clearly that you were created with the capacity to love, and that no power in heaven or on earth can take that from you. Even when you are betrayed, you can love. Even when the world forgets your name, you can love. Even when they crucify you, you can still say, Father, forgive them. Because love is not an act of weakness. It is the supreme act of sovereignty. When you reclaim this right, you awaken something eternal within you. You remember that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This is the mystery of the Christ, not only the man, but the indwelling word in each of us. As the Gospel of Philip says, what you are, you do not know, for you have become one who does not know himself. But when you know yourselves, you will be known. To live this model is to begin from that knowing, not the knowledge of facts, but the knowledge that arises from love. It is to understand that your life is not defined by what others grant you, but by what you bring forth from the depth of your own being. That love is your inheritance, your image, your power, and it changes how you see others too, not as threats or roles, but as reflections of the same divine spark. Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. This is not metaphor. It is a recognition that each person you meet carries within them the same unstealable freedom, the capacity to love, and be transformed by it. The right to love is not one right among many. It is the source of them all. It is the word made flesh in you. This is not merely a message to admire. It is a path to walk. So walk it. Bring forth what is within you. Speak from it. Act from it. Resist from it. Forgive from it. Heal from it, and let it make you free.